Welcome to the next edition of the Connor and Heffernan Show. My name is Mark. My co-host Montana here. Since we did our last episode, there has been some pretty big news coming out through all sports, but like the NFL especially. Aaron Rodgers is now a New York Jet. Not incredibly shocked because that's where he was rumored to go if he were to leave Green Bay. The only question was, like, he's of that age now where he could retire. Well, it's clear he's not going to retire. He's going to be a New York Jet. He brought some of his former teammates with him to New York. Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb. That's just a couple of them that he brought along. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that this could potentially help the Jets in the long run?
I think it'll either really benefit them and they'll win a Super Bowl within the next few seasons, or at least contend, or it's not, or it's going to be the opposite. And I'm not going to say it's going to be the opposite completely, because I will say when you put Aaron Rodgers on a team and you surround him with players he's familiar with and some really good players the Jets have already had or will still potentially get, when you do that, that's a recipe for a good team. That's a recipe for success. But here's the thing, Aaron Rodgers, it has to be a Super Bowl. It is Super Bowl or bust for the Jets. They are getting Aaron Rodgers to get above that hump. And I'm not entirely sure if they can do that. And it's not because it's Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers now, with Tom Brady retiring, he's one of, if not the best quarterback in the league, just long, like overall for years, like one of the best vet. I'll say best vet. How about that? Because we can't put him over Patrick Mahomes, but he's the best veteran quarterback we have left in the league. So for me, that goes a long way. That carries a lot of weight. But I don't know if this team is going to be able to get it done in the time that they'll have Aaron Rodgers. The thing is, since Aaron Rodgers is that vet, it's kind of a double-edged sword because he brings all of that experience and all of that talent, but he also brings that aging body and that aging play style. And so if they don't win, it's kind of a win now situation for them. They need to win. So it could be really good, but I don't really see it ending up in it. If I'm being completely honest right here and right now, I don't see it ending in a Super Bowl. I see it ending in some playoff success, but I don't see it ending in a Super Bowl because when's the last time Aaron Rodgers even was competing in the Super Bowl, even just in Green Bay? I mean, it's been
In 2011.
It's been way too long. We need to stop, in my personal opinion, we need to stop talking about Aaron Rodgers as a Super Bowl contending quarterback. We just need to talk about him for what he is, a great quarterback that has Super Bowl experience. He has the MVPs, but I don't think he's going to be able to get it done, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to have the pieces with him to get this done.
Agreed.
The Jets have been so bad for so dang long. It's going to take more than just getting a Hall of Fame quarterback to get them to compete for a Super Bowl spot. I think they could potentially compete for a playoff spot, but I don't think they're going to make it, very far. Like you said, you pointed to Aaron Rodgers' age. He is older. He is nowhere near where he used to be in terms of mobility, hell, even arm strength. Like, he's older. It's not going to help him out very much. It might help him a little bit, but I guess we will see. Nobody knows how a season's going to go. It's kind of a crazy move at this point in your career. You spend an entire career with a singular team in the Packers, and now you're to the point, you should think about retiring, but he wants to go give, another place to go, which I don't blame him. So we'll see how it goes at the end of the day.
honestly, when you look at it, it's very similar to a Brett Favre move when he
Yeah,
went to Atlanta.
exactly.
It's like a very similar, and even the organization itself with the Packers is somewhat similar in the way that they were ready to move forward. You know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah,
it reminds
it's
me of that.
weird.
And Brett Favre had a couple of, I mean, honestly, he looked like he was ready to go those last couple. I mean, he wasn't, but for the most part, even with the Vikings, he had his moments. I think it'll be very similar to that. He'll have his moments,
Right.
but it's not going to result in a Super Bowl, especially because of all the other teams that are stacked. And I'm sorry, but I would put up a lot of other teams in Super Bowl contention way before I would put the Jets, if I'm being honest. But I do think the Jets will have some playoff success, and I think they'll at least win. I got them winning at least 9, 10 games with
Right.
him this next season. I think they'll easily win 9 to 10 games and be around the same team as they were before, maybe just a little bit more juiced up with Aaron Rodgers. But you know what? We're saying this right now, but you never know what could happen. We could be sitting here this time next year saying, "Oh, Aaron Rodgers went and won a Super," but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think he'll finish his career putting up some decent numbers, having decently good seasons, but I just don't think it's going to end up in another Super Bowl for him or a Super Bowl for the Jets at this point.
Right. Yeah, I don't think so. Um, but again, we'll see. We'll see how the season goes, how it's going to translate. Um, because he could be better than everybody thinks.
That's
Um,
very true. We don't know. It's a shot in the dark. That's really what this move feels like, to be honest.
right. But we'll keep tabs on it as we get closer to the season. We're only a few months away. Um, so yeah, we'll see if he stays healthy through fall camp. They started summer workouts already for some of the spots. So if anything happens there, we will have it on here. Another thing in the NFL, it's kind of an interesting scenario we were talking about in our last episode. It's like talking scenarios between Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. Who's going to have a better start to their career? And the Panthers picked up Bryce Young. The Texans picked up C.J. Stroud. If I'm going to be honest, if I'm going to pick a team that is going to be better suited for a rookie quarterback, it's got to be Bryce Young. It's got to be Bryce Young, right? The
I mean,
the Houston Texans have been an absolute dumpster fire. Not a really good situation for a rookie quarterback to walk into. Not at all. But, the Panthers, they've had their share too. They've had their share of hardship ever since they made the Super Bowl back in 2016. They have not been a great squad. But if I have to go kind of longer term with this, I'm going to have to go Bryce Young and the Panthers. What are your thoughts, on who's going to have the better start to their career? And then even add in long-term success as well.
well, at the end of the day, we've got to look at the teams. And here's the deal. It's not so much which player is better. It's which team is going to be better for once they're there. Because when you're a rookie quarterback, you're coming into a brand new situation. Even if you are the first or second pick, you're in a brand new situation, a brand new league. So it's really which team will promote the best transition into the NFL. And that is the Panthers, the 7-10 Panthers. They were 7-10 this last season
Yeah.
against the Texans were like what 3-13, and I think they had one tie. Yeah, 3-13 and one tie game. I mean, come on now. The Texans are not that team. Their head coach was basically being paid to lose games. It was a terrible season, and they're not going to turn it around. The Panthers, on the other hand, had some moments where they looked like a really, really solid team last year in different parts. They were just too inconsistent. One of the parts they were inconsistent at was quarterback. You put a top pick quarterback in that spot, that already is an upgrade. So I think the Panthers, not only is it just a better situation between the two, I think the Panthers could be in the playoffs this next season. If I'm being honest, I don't think that's too bold of a prediction, just because I do think that the Panthers will have a team that can make it at least into the wild card. But when we talk about teams that have a chance to maybe make the playoffs, I don't give the Texans even a shot, if I'm being completely honest. I give the Panthers a shot. I don't give the Texans a shot. And maybe that's just because of their 3-13-1 record. But usually teams don't turn it around from there and turn that around into, the 9 through 12 wins that you need to make the playoffs. So I don't think we're going to see this Texans team even touch that. But I think that this Panthers team with Young could really maybe make a push and be a really successful team right off the bat.
Yeah, I do think the Panthers have a chance to make some noise. They were kind of on the verge of a playoff spot last year after everybody thought that they were going to be dead. So the fact that they got Bryce Young, I honestly think having Bryce Young is a pretty good move. It is a young roster. They've got a young quarterback that brings a lot of energy to the field. Yeah, there's everything points to them making at least a little bit of noise when the fall comes. I would not be shocked to see him in a playoff spot at all. But again, we'll kind of see how things play out. I think one thing's for sure, I think the Texans are going to be as bad as they have been, unfortunately, for C.J. Stroud. They picked up a couple of pretty decent pieces in the draft, but they needed to pick up a lot more. They need to overhaul that entire organization from the top down, because the leadership has sucked for years. Not a really good situation for a rookie to be in, but we'll keep tabs on all that if anything comes out of it. And obviously when the season comes within the next few months, we'll talk about it. But how about our way too early Super Bowl predictions? Who do you think, with what we know now, who do you think is going to be in the running to make that Super Bowl next January, February?
For sure, man. So that's a great question. I love the way too early predictions, because honestly, I think we've done them before for different things, and I think it's always a good thing to do just to see where we're at. But I got 3 different that are rolling around my head right now. The first one is just plain and simple a rematch of this last Super Bowl, Eagles Chiefs. In my personal, and this goes in order of likelihood for me. So my first, and the one I think is most likely, is I do think we'll see a rematch. I think we'll see Eagles versus Chiefs again. And if I'm predicting who would win that, I've got the Eagles coming out on top this time. I think this Eagles team is going to come back even stronger than they were this last season, and they're really going to give the Chiefs a run for their money. So my first and most likely Super Bowl prediction has to be Chiefs Eagles, with the Eagles coming out on top. My second one is actually not even the Chiefs at all. It's actually Bills. I've got the Bills making a push, and it being Bills versus 49ers. And I've got to say, between that matchup, I've got the Bills finally getting their Super Bowl that they've long wanted, long deserved, and I've got them winning that. And then my third and final Super Bowl prediction, my way too early Super Bowl prediction, I've got to give a little bit of love. This might be a little bit of an off-the-wall pick, but I've got to give a little bit of love to the Minnesota Vikings, because they had a really pretty strong regular season last season. season, and then they kind of fizzled out in the playoffs. But I truly don't think that there'll be a fizzle out this season. So I've got the Bengals and the Vikings meeting up in the Super Bowl next February. And I've actually got the Bengals walking away with it and finally getting that Super Bowl win with Joe Burrow. So those are my 3 way too early predictions. If I'm being completely honest and more realistic, just overall, I do think the Chiefs are going to be that team that make it out. But I tried to pick 3 different scenarios, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be looking at a rematch. I really truly think we'll see Eagles and Chiefs again. What about you, man?
I really agree with your last statement. I think we're gonna see a rematch of last year between the Eagles and the Chiefs. I think those 2 teams are the class of the field right now. I also do think the Bengals have an opportunity to make a run to the Super Bowl. They've been good enough. The Bills, always in the running. 49ers, always in the running. So for my first one, I'm going to have to go with Chiefs, Eagles. I honestly think that's the more clear-cut option. And then for my second game, I'm going to have to go Bengals, 49ers as well. I think both of those teams have been on the edge. And I think if the 49ers can figure their offensive side out, they've got a really good defense. I think they can make a push. Bengals have a really good offense and a pretty good defense. So I think that they can find themselves back in a situation like they were a couple of years ago against the Rams. And then third pick's tough. But if I were to have to go with anybody, unfortunately, it'd have to be Vikings. I would say Vikings 49ers. Oh, wait, never mind. That can't happen because they're both NFC. Excuse me. Vikings Bills.
That's a good one. That's a really
Yeah.
good one.
Vikings Bills. I think that could potentially be a really good matchup. Like you were pointing to, the Vikings had a pretty strong regular season last year. They just kind of folded. So yeah, those are my 3 picks. I do think the more clear-cut one, though, that has the more odds of happening has to be the Eagles Chiefs. Because I think the Eagles are going to be better, and I think the Chiefs are going to be that much better as well.
I agree. They're the, like you said, they're the master class. Those are the teams that just they are the best in both conferences, and I don't think that's going to change. I really don't. I think this could even be a potential trilogy type of matchup where we see them meet 3 times. Now, will it be 3 times in a row? I don't know about that one, but I think this could be like an epic, like Super Bowl rivalry, not just a one and done. This could be something that happens more than once. And I hope that's what happens because it was a really solid Super Bowl, to be honest with you. I have seen way less exciting Super Bowls. Yeah, there's been better ones too, but it was one of the better ones we've seen. And honestly, I think we would get more of that this next Super Bowl. I do think the Eagles, if I'm predicting who would win it between the 2, I'm sticking with that. I think that the Eagles would walk away with it just because I think the Eagles, like you said, will be even better. And now the Chiefs will at least be the same, if not even a little bit better. But I think this Eagles team is going to find a way to beat them because they were so close to figuring out this last Super Bowl. And it didn't happen. And honestly, sometimes that loss can make a team so much better and give a team that edge. So in the case of the Eagles, I think we're going to see a team that's just going to have that sharper edge. And so I think like we both said, Eagles, Chiefs, I mean, I would say there's a very good likelihood. Of course, injuries or anything else can happen, but I think that it's almost written in the stars with this one. I think that they're meant to meet back up, and I think it'll be great. So obviously we'll have plenty more NFL. NFL news will kick up soon. We'll get some action, off season, but it's not the off season for much longer. I know we're only in May, but it goes by fast. And
Yeah.
before you know it, it's going to be football season again. So plenty of exciting things there. But something that it currently is right now is it's almost done, but it is still NBA basketball season. And one of us still has a team in the playoffs.
Yes, sir.
Spoiler alert, it's not me. I still had a team in the playoffs as of a couple days ago, but not now. So one of us still has a team in the playoffs, and that would be you with your Miami Heat. So since the Eastern Conference Finals are going on as we speak, I believe Game 5 was yesterday.
The
Do you
Celtics,
have the Celtics coming back? They'd be the first team to ever come back. They would be 1 and 149 for being down 0-3. I know you're a Heat guy, but judging by how the Celtics have played the last 2 games, what are your predictions for this series? Take it away, bro. This is your team. Let's go. Let's hear it.
Man. So after they got up 3-0, I really felt good about a potential sweep. But I was also very hesitant with that thought. I thought that the Celtics were going to find a way and take a couple. I've always said this. I have said this the last about week or so that this series has been going. I've got the Heat in 6. I think the Heat will take care of the Celtics when they go back to Miami. I think that home court advantage is really going to help them. Jimmy Butler has been huge in the postseason. His statistics for a singular postseason is toward the top of Heat history. Like, you put together the threes made, just points. He's been really good. Bam Adebayo has been good. And I'm sure you've heard this mentioned before. The Heat have like 8 undrafted players. It's crazy. And they're doing this. They're in the Eastern Conference Final for the 3rd time in the last 4 years. With like 8 undrafted players. It's unreal. What Coach Spoelstra has done to coach this team up is incredible, and he's going to go down as one of the greatest coaches to ever coach in the game. Bar none. But yeah, obviously the Miami Heat, they're in the Eastern Conference Final. They're in the Eastern Conference Final for the 3 times in the last 4 years, which is incredible. And they're doing this with 8 undrafted basketball players right now, which is almost unheard of. You don't hear of a team having that many undrafted players have this much success in the span that we're in right now. And the fact that they got the top 2 seeded Celtics on the brink of elimination right now is pretty crazy. They have the opportunity to take care of them in Miami now, which before the series started, I'm like, the Heat are going to win in 6. And that's what I think is still going to happen. Even when they went up 3-0, I felt pretty confident that they were going to get a sweep or a gentleman's sweep. I thought they were going to win in either 4 or 5 by the way that they were playing. But now that the Celtics took 2, I do think Jimmy Butler is going to come back with a vengeance. I think Bam Adebayo is going to come back with a vengeance. I think Duncan Robinson's going to come back with a vengeance. I think this entire Heat team is going to come back with a vengeance. I think they're going to take care of the Celtics in Miami. What are your thoughts on this series so far? It's been a pretty decent series. Some interesting games. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really good series. Honestly, I think that this Celtics team, you can't count them out, obviously, because they were one of the better teams. I mean, when we look at the regular season, you wouldn't even expect the Heat to still be in. But here's the thing, whatever you have during the regular season as a record does not matter once you get to the playoffs. Look at the Bucks. Look at the Bucks, man. I thought they were going to, I mean, look at the Bucks, and that is a great example of what, despite your record, it can be flawless, it can be almost flawless. It doesn't matter. Once you get to the playoffs, it's a whole different thing. And Jimmy Butler comes alive during the playoffs. There's something comes over him. I don't know what it is, but it's always been the case ever since. Even in his late Chicago days, his early Chicago days, he was more of a role player, and then he developed and turned into that star. But even his Chicago, I mean, we could go through the line of the teams he's played on, and he comes alive in the playoffs, and he does a really great job of leading teams in the playoffs. And this is no exception. I mean, this is one of the better postseasons in Heat history, and it's led by Jimmy Butler and him alone. I mean, they've got great players, like you said, Duncan Robinson, Bam Adebayo. They've got good pieces around him, but without you take Jimmy Butler off this team, and they're not still in this. He is the reason that they have stayed afloat during some of these really, really hard matchups, especially the Celtics. I'm with you. So I'm with you on Heat in 6. I don't think that the Celtics are going to be able to be the first team to come back from 0-3. The record would literally be 1-149, and I don't have the Celtics being able to do that. And it's no hate to the Celtics. As much as I don't like them, it's not because I don't like them. It's just because I just don't think they're that team, man. You know what I mean? Yeah, they're a good team, but I don't think you can dig yourself out. Now, I will say this: if the Heat drop Game 6,
it's scary.
the series is busted wide open, man. I still think the Heat would win in 7, but that would be in Boston, though. Game 7 would be Boston.
That would be in Boston. And they did take the first 2 in Boston in the series. So
if it's anything like the 76ers Game 7 in Boston, that's a tough place to win, and you're probably not going to perform at your best in a Game 7 in Boston. That environment is unforgiving. So
they need to win in Miami. They need to win it in Miami.
They do. Absolutely. Game 6 is a must win, but Jimmy Butler came out in his presser and was like, we're going to win. No worries. He basically assuring Heat fans, we're going to pull it off. And Jimmy Butler is a guy that can do that. That's what I'm saying, man. I mean, he's a guy that if he tells you your team is going to win and he's got it, it's probably the case because he's just that guy. So I've got the Heat in 6, but moving forward, unfortunately for me, the Western Conference is already figured out, and it is the Denver Nuggets. But when we look at either Celtics or we both have Heat, either of those teams, can either of those teams take down the Nuggets in the finals, or are the Nuggets just the best team that is going to be in the finals, regardless of who wins the Eastern Conference Finals? What are your thoughts on that?
Man, it is a tough topic, isn't it? Because the Joker over with the Nuggets has been absolutely incredible. He's still a triple-double machine. That team as a whole is one of the better teams that I have ever watched. If I were to think of a team that, could potentially give the Nuggets a run, I think the Miami Heat, with the way they're playing right now, is that option. Because the Miami Heat have shown no matter your seed, you can beat anybody, especially the way Jimmy Butler has been playing. He's been playing lights out. And I think a Heat Nuggets final would be a really good final. And I think it would have the potential to go all 7 games. No doubt.
No, that's a good prediction. That's a really, I think Heat, it would absolutely go 7 games. If it's Heat Nuggets, no matter who wins, I don't know, honestly, man. It's going to be a shot for shot, punch for punch series if it's Nuggets Heat. But if the Celtics in some universe somehow figure it out, there is no way they're going to make that series more than 4 or 5 games, just because the amount they have to catch up in this Heat series, they're going to be gassed for the finals. And I don't care who they have. I mean, yeah, they have Jason Tatum. They've got younger guys. They've got a good core. The Nuggets would eat them up. The Heat, even though the series got pushed from what I thought was going to be 4 or 5 games to 6, it doesn't matter. If they win in 6, they've got a couple of days to recoup, and then it's game on. And I think they're going to make it a good series against the Nuggets. The one thing I will say is the Joker is the one player that I don't know how you match up if
He's
you
a
are.
matchup nightmare.
He is. He's a match. I mean, you saw that against the Lakers, and arguably we had someone that very much should have been locking him up more than anyone on the Heat should be. I mean, Anthony Davis, even though he's not, I will say this: when we beat them in the bubble, we had Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee. The reason we beat them was because we had more than just Anthony Davis, and we had size, and we matched that up against the Nuggets. Had we had that again this series, it might have been a little more even, but what I will say is this: Joker didn't even play that good against the Lakers in game 2 and 3. Game 1, he had a good game. Game 4, he had a good game. But game 2 and 3, especially offensively, shooting wise, he didn't play that good. So
No.
I think Joker, and that part of that is because, again, it is because of Anthony Davis. It is because of the defense they had on him. So I do think that Joker will have an easier time offensively against either of these teams than he had against the Lakers. I think that is a fair thing to say. Yeah, Bam is a pretty solid defensive player, and Bam will be able to keep up with him. And I do think the Heat will do a good job of doubling Jokic, but I just think that Joker is a problem, and Jamal Murray is a problem too. But Jamal Murray is easier to lock up than Joker. Teams can find ways. We did it. I mean, we didn't obviously do a fantastic job because we lost, but Dennis Schroeder, we had moments where we had him locked up. So you can lock Jamal Murray up. Jokic is a different story. You can lock him up, but he can do so many other things than just shoot that he'll still hurt you even if you lock him up offensively. So
Right.
I think it'll be a great series. If it's Heat Nuggets, like I think it will be, like we both think it will be, that's a 7-game series, and that is a shootout. And that doesn't mean it's going to be an actual 3-point shootout, but I mean it's going to be a shootout, shot for shot. Possession for possession. It is people. I heard someone saying the views are going to be down. No one's going to want to watch it. I'm like, are you
No.
serious? Come on now. I mean, first of all, give some respect. Nuggets, their first finals in NBA history, and this is the best Nuggets team we have ever seen. Literally, I mean, this is the season where they look like that team, where they look like that dominant. They are the best Nuggets team we have ever seen. So to see that, and to put that up against a Miami Heat team, a team that people only thought made it as far as they did in the bubble because it was the bubble, to see them back here, it's crazy, man. I mean, it truly is
It's
insane.
incredible.
It is. It is, man. It is. And honestly, the Miami Heat are a team that I can't be mad at them. I really can't be mad at them for this success. There's some teams where I'd be like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
They've
It
got
is
a
not.
really good culture.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's the perfect word. That is what sets them apart from these other teams, is their culture. And that is why, even if you're not a fan of them, you don't hate to see them win because of the culture they've built up. It's a fun, you know, competitive, championship winning, all-star, highlight reel providing culture that has given the Heat, speak quietly, because they're not super loud about it. They are quietly one of the better organizations in NBA history because they won early 2000s, mid 2000s, and now we get to see them win in 2020 plus. I mean, that's one of the most
Mm-hmm.
successful dynasties in the last 20 years. That is an organization that might be, when we talk about the Golden State Warriors and how successful they were, we also have to take a look at a team like the Miami Heat because they've had all the success. Also, shout out to Udonis Haslem. He might get himself a championship ring his last season. I believe that would be his 4th. I
Yep.
mean, dude, he's won every single championship with the Miami Heat. So I just think that this is special. This is special. Either way, this is special because now it's not, if the Celtics make it, I'll be mad. And I know you obviously would be too for different reasons, but
Oh,
I
I would
don't
be so
that
mad.
again, Jimmy came out and said they're going to take care of it. And when Jimmy usually says that, that's what you have to go with. So I do think that it'll be Heat in 6. And then I think it'll be a 7-game series versus Nuggets versus Heat. But I can't pick a winner right now, man. Next show, they'll probably be, the finals will be going on more than likely. So we'll know what's up. But as of now, man, I don't know. I've got to say it'll be a 7-game series, but I have it being a toss up. Because I just think it'll be such a back and forth series between both teams, no matter who comes out with it on top. But moving on, because obviously the Heat and the Celtics and the Nuggets are the only teams that are left. But going over, we'll start with the Lakers versus Nuggets because that's the series that just wrapped up. But we're going to go into an entire kind of playoff wrap up. We might do one completely at the end once it's all said and done. But looking at other teams, we'll talk Lakers first, but what were some teams that surprised us most in these playoffs, both in good and bad ways? But first and foremost, man, what are your final thoughts on this Lakers team in the playoffs? What would you, if you had a couple of things to share with us about the Lakers, what are your final thoughts on that team? Was it a successful playoff run? Was it a bust? What are your thoughts, man?
I think considering that, the Lakers were a play-in team, after we thought that they were kind of dead throughout the regular season, they were a sub 500 team for quite a bit of the season. We didn't think that they were actually going to put themselves in a position to be in a playoff spot, and then they make the Western Conference final. I think that's a pretty successful run, but there's also a part of me that wants to say a bust as well. With that roster, they should have put themselves in a better position than they did throughout the regular season. And I get they dealt with injuries and stuff, but even then, they had a roster to compete up towards the top of the Western Conference. And they did not. They had to get a play-in game, and then after the play-in game, hop into the first round right away, go through the first round, and then go to the second round. They had a long run. It was a long run. I don't think, I'm sure Laker fans are disappointed, but I would hold your head up high. After how the season went, to start the year, they started off the season so poorly. And you can attest to that. I mean, you don their colors every day. So, yeah, I think it's a pretty successful season, postseason run, considering where they started at the beginning of the year. Now, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on it since they are your squad?
Well, we share definitely some similar thoughts on how that's went. As a whole, their regular season was disappointing. Obviously, we were stuck with Russell Westbrook, Patrick Beverley. We had some really bad players and just not a very complete roster. But we very well could have gotten out of this position a little bit sooner. I truly do think so. Like you said, yeah, we didn't have the Jared Vanderbilts. We didn't have Malik Beasley didn't play great in the playoffs. He had a couple regular season games. D'Angelo Russell. We didn't have Rui Hachimura the whole season. We didn't have all these players the whole season throughout all of it. But the building up of it was too slow. It was something that finally happened. We finally kind of juiced our roster a little bit, and it's something that we should have done last season. Last trade deadline, we should have done it, and we didn't do it. And it felt like, as good as it felt to do it, it felt like we should have done this last season. And if we did this last season, we probably would be in a better position. What I will say is after trade deadline, once it was all said and done, we looked like a way better team, but we still were inconsistent. One of our biggest issues the whole season up until the end was we were inconsistent the whole season. Even with this new juiced, more well depth stacked roster, we still had our inconsistencies. So I think that it's a success for where we started. We were 2-10. No one had us even making the playoffs. And to make it to the Western Conference Finals, but it's a very bittersweet feeling. It's a very bittersweet feeling because we got swept. And it's like we shouldn't have gotten swept. Okay. I mean, we shouldn't have gotten swept. That is the biggest reason, besides, and I like what you said. You're like, you read my mind, honestly, bro. You're like, I want to almost say it was a bust, because I do too. I do, because I have another show, Purple and Gold, and I made an episode. It might have been last episode. It was before the Nuggets series started, or it might have been 2 episodes ago. But I said I think this roster as a whole, top to bottom, is better than the team that won in the bubble. And that's a big statement because we had Rondo, we had Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee. We had a lot of star players, even if they were aging. But I think that this team as a whole, our shooting was better. Now we lacked Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee, and we lacked that size in the center and the power forward position, and that was a big shot, especially in the center position. But other than that, I think we were a better team. So if we were a better team, then why did we get swept? You know what I mean, man? So it's like
Right.
it was kind of a bust. And that final series was the bust for me because we played great against the 2 seed Grizzlies. We beat them in 6. We played great against the 6 seed defending champ Golden State Warriors, beat them in 6. I at least thought we were going to make this another series, and we didn't do that. So it's the way it ended was a bust. And it, for me, it's like we made it so close, but it doesn't matter. We made it close. That's great. A lot of teams can say that a lot of years, and it doesn't make it any better. So I'm with you. I'm between it being success and being a bust. But talking about some teams that I know were busts. The Bucks were a huge bust. But here's the thing, man. It's not that they were a bust. It's that the Heat just came in with so much more fire. I don't think the Bucks were expecting that game one, the way that team came out. I don't think that the Bucks were expecting that, and I think they just could not recover after that. And again, they had injuries. They had a couple players that went out, and Giannis went out. I believe it was game 1 or game 2, and it just was like they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't win. It wasn't their series. But also respect to the Miami Heat because they just came out and Miami went off, especially Jimmy Butler. I mean, he just absolutely torched them in that series. And so I've got to say that a team that surprised me in a bad way was the Bucks because before the playoffs started, I had them in the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, I had them making it all the way up to the Eastern Conference Finals, and look where we are. We're at the Eastern Conference Finals, and they're nowhere to be seen. Another team that I will consider a bust and that surprised me in a negative way for how they ended up was the Sacramento Kings. I totally thought they were going to make it at least to the semis. And I think that the reason that they didn't was because the Warriors have that veteran experience and just that experience as a whole. So they know how to outlast teams in series. They just had more stamina and they could outlast that Kings team. The Warriors were not a better team top to bottom. They just could outlast because they had that experience. So I thought the Kings were going to go farther. And then one more before we switch back to you and your surprise teams. A surprise team in a good way, because I'm talking all negative. A surprise team in a good way. I've got to go with the Miami Heat. We've talked a lot about the Heat. I know you're not probably too upset about that.
No.
At least we're talking about one of our teams and not neither of our teams. But I will say this, the Miami Heat, come on. I mean, this historic run, whether it ends in a championship or not, if it ends in a championship, we've got to talk about this potentially being one of the more historic Miami Heat championships of all time. Between Haslam getting the championship in his last season and this team of, I think it was 5 to 7 undrafted players on the team. And
Yeah.
you've got Tyler Hero and you've got Victor Oladipo injured. And you got it blows my mind. The leadership of Jimmy Butler is off the charts. It is ridiculous. He is such a talent and such a leader that I mean, this team, there's no telling how far this team can go. And this team is that team. So I've got to give my surprising good team, because I said 2 negative ones. My surprising good team has to be the Heat, because how could they not be anybody's? They're a step above. But when we talk about teams that surprised us both good and bad, what are your teams? What are some teams that come to your mind?
Um, in terms of bad, they were decent, but I thought the Phoenix Suns were going to be a lot better. The Phoenix Suns had a breakout year last year. They won the West. And now they were a 4th place team in a pretty competitive conference. Sacramento is another pleasant surprise. I did not think Sacramento was going to be a 3rd seed in the Western Conference. But they've done a pretty good job at building a solid roster. Over on the Eastern Conference side, the Cleveland Cavaliers, pleasant surprise. Because after LeBron left, I did not think the Cavaliers would be able to hold up their end of the bargain in the East. I thought that they were going to be a bottom of the barrel team, maybe every now and then, maybe get a play-in berth. But they put them they're in the 4th seed. 51-31 record, had one of the better records in all the NBA. But if I'm going to have to go with my biggest, I wouldn't say surprise, the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets, really good this year. Really good. The Joker, absolutely incredible. He's a triple-double machine. If you go to the sports book and bet him to get a triple-double, you probably have a really good shot of picking it up. Because not only does he score the ball well, he distributes the ball well, and he rebounds the ball well. He is an all-around good player. And I've got a quick question for you. Once it comes time that Joker retires, do you think he's going to go down as one of the best players, if not the best player in NBA history, just based on stats? What are your thoughts on that?
So here's the thing, man. I love that question because for me, for the longest time, I was like, Joker is, I don't want to say overrated, but I was like, I understand. I think the only thing that for me set him apart from other big men in the league was his ability to pass. Because I'm going to be honest, bro, even since his rookie season, no big he's been the best passer ever. Since he was a rookie, the way he passes, no big man has ever done that. That set him apart. But until this season, I didn't see it all, bro. For some reason, I didn't. I think I even made an old YouTube video that's since been deleted because I've not been able to find it about how he was overrated. So I had no love for Joker, and maybe that's just because of all the times I've been to Lakers Nuggets game and the Nuggets have beat the Lakers. Maybe that's why. But I think what it really is for me, it was just the passing that set him apart. But this last season, his level of play, this is the first season, if I'm being completely honest, the first season that I truly think that he actually set himself apart in MVP as the MVP and didn't win it. I'm glad that Joel got one, but I think that this was the season that Joker set himself apart. And if he wins a title with those 2 MVPs, and I can see him winning at least one more, with those MVPs, the title, he would absolutely be finals MVP. I mean, Jamal Murray maybe, but it's going to be Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Top to bottom, what he does for teams, it's going to be Joker. I think that Jamal Murray's a great player and he'll show up in the finals. It's going to be Joker. So you add a finals MVP. I mean, big men, as great as they are, you don't see them getting all of those accolades. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see them, some have titles, some have MVPs, some have both. But the big man position, the star big men, you see some of them that have the MVPs and the titles and the finals MVPs. But those are the Shaqs. Those are the ones that we look at as the greatest of all time. Those are the top tier centers. So what I will say is this. If Joker wins this title and he wins finals MVP and he wins at least one more MVP, I've got him in my top 5 centers of all time. Do I have him as one of my top players of all time? It depends on how he finishes statistically for me.
Okay.
He would also have to get at least one more chip. For him to get on my top 5 of all time, he has to win at least one more title and he has to get his statistics up there. But he will. He already is. So I think that if he can get his statistics up like he already will, because he has plenty of career left, and he wins another title, then we're talking top 5 all time. But for me, he'll definitely make my top 5 centers of all time. He honestly, bro, he's already in my top 10 of all time without a title. So I love that question, man. That got me rambling a little bit, but I love that question because Joker, we've got to be looking at that. But what's your thought, man? Where do you have him, especially if he wins this title? I know you don't want him to, but if he wins this title, do you have him top 5 centers, or do you have him top 5 all time?
As of right now, I do have him in my top 10. Top 10 centers of all time. If he can find a way to get this championship plus a finals MVP, he's going to move up into my top 5. And I think if he can win one more MVP, he may be the best center that I've ever watched in my life. You put it together beautifully. The way he passes the ball, you don't see a big man pass like that too often. He averaged double digits assists every single game. He distributes that ball very well. He is a really good all-around center. Now, in terms of all time, I think if he were to win this championship, MVP, like finals MVP, another regular season MVP, and I think if he wins another championship potentially, I think it possibly could put him in the top 5, like maybe all-time players toward the end of his career, especially if he finishes well stat-wise. Now, if he falls off, he's not going to be in that consideration.
Agree. And that's the thing, you never know, because we could see injuries come up. We could see him traded to a new team, and it could be, and again, I'm not going to say, oh, he's a system player. I feel like that is extremely disrespectful to call Jokic a system player, and that's the only reason he's successful. He'd be successful on any team. But I think that time will tell. That's the thing that me and you are both saying. Time will tell. I mean, it's not something we know right now, but we very well might know within the next 5 years, even within the next 3 years. Because honestly, I think he's going to get another MVP. He's going to win finals MVP if that's what happens for them he is going to be that guy. He already is that guy. And I think he's great. Speaking of greats, our final NBA topic. This has been an NBA heavy episode, but it's the time of year to talk about it. But our final big NBA topic, which it's a big one, is LeBron James, Los Angeles Laker, Cleveland Cavalier, Miami Heat. He's been around the league. He's a great player, legendary player. No matter love him or hate him, you've got to respect him.
Yep.
He came out after the Lakers, after missing a game-winning shot, which I will say this. Quick segue to that. Still not over that.
That was a bad take.
I don't know why. So here's my thing, bro. AD's wide open.
Yeah.
AD is wide open. AD can hit a 3, especially wide open. We saw him hit a 3 in the bubble with Jokic on him. He hit it over Jokic in a buzzer. If AD is wide open, he will hit that. Another thing LeBron could have done is roll off of them and hit the midi, because the thing is, if he would have gotten a mid-range, there's a better chance of them fouling him and them calling it, or he at least spins off and gets them. I get driving. If he would have shot a 3, I would have been furious. So I will say I'm glad he didn't try to shoot a 3 to win it. But they were expecting him to do that. That it is LeBron James. They know that he's going to try to get to the rim and get the foul. And I'm going to be honest, bro, I didn't see a foul. Did you? I didn't see a foul. I thought that was clean. And I'm a Lakers fan, and it hurts to say that. That was clean. That was anyways, but after that loss, I will say he had 40 points. He almost had a triple-double. He was on track to have a 50-plus game in the first half, but obviously 38 years old, and it didn't happen in the second half. But anyways, after that loss, LeBron came out and said a lot of things. Carmelo Anthony, legendary player, retired that same day, and he came out and talked about that. And then he also said, I've got to think about my future with basketball. and I've got to reevaluate. And that was very vague. But then an ESPN reporter asked him after that, as he was leaving the building, what were you talking about, LeBron? Like, what thread should we pull with this? And LeBron said, I'm talking about retirement. He flat out said retirement. So one might have taken it as a trade at first. Like, I might want to go to a different team or something. But it seems like he directly addressed it and said retirement. Now, again, LeBron James almost had a triple-double, 40 points, solid season, broke Kareem's all-time scoring record, had really, really, really solid stats this season. I mean, did not miss a beat from last season. And that's despite having injuries. And apparently he had, I believe it was a tendon in his foot that he apparently had torn the whole playoffs and might need surgery this summer. That might be part of why he's talking about retirement, to be completely honest. But what are your thoughts? Is LeBron James really thinking about retirement, or is this him pressuring the Lakers front office to get a player like Kyrie Irving, to get a star player? I'm going to just, spoiler alert, I'll let you go, but I'm going to say really quickly, I think it's just him trying to pressure the front office. But what do you think it is? Do you think he truly is thinking about handing him up?
Man, it's a tough question, right? Because he is obviously older. He's been in the NBA for over 20 years or close to 20 years. He's been in the NBA since he was out of high school. So, and now he's 38 years old. So, man, that's tough. Obviously, as you get older, you're more prone to get hurt. But in my honest opinion here, I think he is just trying to push that front office to make a move. Get him a couple more pieces, or maybe he's looking for that contract. He's wanting the Lakers to sign him to a beefier contract, like he already needs money. Dude's got plenty of money. But I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to go with that latter one and definitely say he's trying to put pressure on that front office. That's at least the vibe I'm getting right now. I'm sure as we get closer to maybe when the G League starts up this summer, and as we start getting into workouts for the NBA season, I think we'll hear a little bit more. I do think that this next year, if he doesn't hang him up after this past season, I do think that next year there's potential to where he hangs up his cleats then.
And I'm with you, bro. Honestly, here's the thing. I think that LeBron is telling the Lakers that they have 2 seasons because he has one more season guaranteed, and then it's that player option the next season. I think he's telling the Lakers, we have 2 seasons to get this done, because I do think that as great as LeBron played this season, he looked tired some games. I'm a big Lakers guy, so I watched a lot of games, even regular season, maybe especially regular season. Dude looked tired. And I will say they did do a better job of not pushing him so far with minutes throughout the whole season. He had his big spurts, especially when he was trying to pass Kareem, because he wanted those minutes to get there. But they did it. I mean, this was a better season overall for the Lakers, for LeBron. And the one thing I will say, though, that foot, man, I know LeBron has a history of just like saying things in the narrative, but I wouldn't be shocked if the surgery thing is 100%. I mean, I would not be shocked if his foot is pretty messed up, because he's had issues with that foot since he became a Laker. Now, not that we skipped the championship season, but that first season with the Lakers, he had an injury with his foot. skipped it in the championship season. The next season, he had another injury with the foot. And then now, so the foot has been an issue. The foot has been plaguing him quietly. LeBron is not an injury prone guy. So we're not sitting here saying LeBron is always out. No, but like that's been plaguing him quietly since he's been a Laker. So the only shred of truth to the retirement would be if his foot is not going to, if he's not going to be able to fully recover, because it's very possible. And LeBron is an explosive player. He is not a consistent 3-point shooter. He is a consistent mid-range shooter, but he's not his game to 3. There's no way he would not be the same player. So maybe there's a shred of truth if there's an injury involved and he has to get a surgery and all that. But I think it's pressure. But let's hypothetically, because it is hypothetical and it's not even really to that level yet of being possible, but let's say he does retire and it's all said and done. He's past Kareem. He made a push for one more chip, didn't make it, but made it as close as one can make it without being in the finals. What is your final placement of him all time if he retires, which again, I don't think he's going to, no matter what that means. I don't think he's going to. If he does, where would you put him in your all-time list as of today? If he retired this second, where does he go? That's a tough question, I know, but where are you putting him all time?
It's really tough, but he would be in my top 3 all time, I think. He passed Kareem for the all-time career points, scored in a career, which was a very tough feat, but he did it, albeit he had 20 years to do it. So I'm not docking him on that. He had a long career. It's still an incredible feat either way to pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's had an incredible career. He's won numerous finals in his career. He's been to numerous finals in his career. He's won MVPs. He's had a really, really solid career. I would have him in my top 3. I don't know if I would have him at the top, but he would definitely be solidified in my top 3 players of all time. And yeah, LeBron James needs no introduction. He did well for my Miami Heat when he was there. He did well for the Cleveland Cavaliers when he was there. He brought the Cleveland Cavaliers back from the dead. And they came back and won an NBA. Was it 1 or 2 NBA championships?
Only one, but they were decently close. The season before they won, they were decently close, but then Kevin Love and Kyrie went down, but they were decently close, but only one actual title, but it was arguably one of the most historic titles in history.
Yeah. Like I said, the Cleveland Cavaliers were borderline dead until LeBron James went back.
Oh my. And then after he left, they were dead again. They've been dead. The Cleveland Cavaliers have been dead since the 90s. Without LeBron, they've been dead. I mean, they were decent in the 90s. They had some success in the Michael Jordan era, but without LeBron, they've been a dead organization, to be honest with you. So,
well, and now they're building things back up.
Exactly. I can't say anymore. You're right. They're not that team anymore, but they were that team without him for sure, before and after.
What about you? Where do you have LeBron James? Is it top 10, top 5, top 3? Share your thoughts.
He's in my top 3. We share that. What I will say is this. I Well Beyond the Arc, my NBA show that I do on live weekly. This might have been a year ago. Me and my co-host Manoli did a Who's Our GOAT. We finally addressed that. We avoided it for the first 20 episodes of the show. And then we're like, all right, I guess we'll do it. But I will say this. I had a very, I guess you could say, surprising answer for who I had as my GOAT. I had Kareem as my GOAT, and I had Michael Jordan as second, and I had LeBron as third. And the reason I had Kareem at first was because he had 6 titles, all the MVPs, and he also had the all-time scoring record. Now, LeBron has since passed him, but this is what I will say. This is how my list goes now. Because LeBron passed Kareem, LeBron doesn't move up. LeBron is 3. Kareem moves down to 2 for me. So now we got Michael Jordan as my 1. Kareem is my 2 and LeBron is my 3. And that is because the only reason I had Kareem at 1 was because he had the scoring record and the 6 titles. Without that scoring record, you look at Michael Jordan's career and it's as good, if not better than Kareem's. That scoring record was the only thing. And again, Kareem was a cheat code of a player, and he had so many records and so many things that have since been broken. But I've got to put, and LeBron hasn't moved. Though this is now this is what I will say. If LeBron would have came back, especially down 0-3, and this is unfortunately hypothetical and not going to happen, as much as I wish it was still going to happen. LeBron comes back 0-3, and then he wins the title. He is my number 2. I put him above Kareem, but that didn't happen. But if LeBron can get number 5, if LeBron comes back and at least gets number 5 with the Lakers, which if he comes back, I think they do have a shot to get number 5 for him and number 18.
I do too.
I truly think they will. They, especially if they bring back Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura, if they give them the money they need this summer, we're looking at a whole season with this team, bro. I mean, you gotta piece it together and think they'd be, especially if we add Kyrie Irving, as much as his antics and all that has not always been. I think that would be a good setup.
The thing is, they cannot get off to a horrid start next year, they did this year. Because they were playing catch up all year long.
Up till the end.
Yeah.
Right up until the end. There was talk they might not even be in the playoffs up until March. So, yeah, I mean, but what I will say is this. If LeBron can win number 5 and win finals MVP, which it's LeBron James, even if AD had a better performance or Kyrie, if they had him or someone had it, he'd still win it. If he gets that, then he's not my GOAT, but he is my number 2. And it would be Michael Jordan, LeBron, and then Kareem. But I still have LeBron in my number 3 just because Kareem had those 6 titles and he had all that other success. And while LeBron has hit that all-time scoring record, 4 titles is not enough for my GOAT. It's got, you know what I'm saying? It's not all titles. Yeah. Taking titles into account, that's not the GOAT. So anyways, man, but that was fun. We had a very stacked NBA segment, but moving on, we have a couple more segments to get to. NHL playoffs are still going. It's been a minute. I think last episode was round 1. I think is when we talked.
Yeah, it was round 1.
Some stuff has changed, but run us through it, man. How's it going? Where are we at? And where are we going with these playoffs?
So the underdog Florida Panthers are going to the Stanley Cup final. They ended up they swept the Carolina Hurricanes, which nobody saw coming. The Hurricanes were one of the better teams in the East. The Florida Panthers, though, got hot at the right time. And while it was a sweep, all the games were really close. Hell, the second game, I think, in that series was a 5 overtime game. It went on until about 2 a.m. Central Time. It was ridiculous. And then they had to go back and play the next night. But now they're getting plenty of rest. Right now we've got the Vegas Golden Knights and the Dallas Stars in their conference final right now. The Vegas Golden Knights ran through the first 3 games. The Golden Knights look like an unstoppable force. But Dallas stormed back and ended up winning yesterday. And they're down 3-1 going into the game Saturday night at 7. That game is going to be on ABC. It's been a very entertaining playoffs. You had the best regular season team ever in the Boston Bruins. They won 64 games in the regular season. They get bounced out in the first round. I wish I would have bet money on it because I would have definitely bet against them in the first round. Because President Trophy winners, which that trophy goes to the best overall record in the NHL in a regular season. So had I, there is a trend. The President Trophy winners do not typically do very well in the playoffs. They get through the first round. There's usually a second round exit in there somewhere. But for the most part, they don't make it out of the first, and Boston did not. So, yeah, man, it's been entertaining as hell. The fact that we've got an underdog in the Florida Panthers who were trying to battle for a playoff spot. That sounds familiar. It sounds kind of like your Lakers in the NBA battling for a playoff spot at the end. And now they are 4 games away from winning a Stanley Cup final. It's kind of crazy, man. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it is. Them just being in here is huge. It's a big underdog. They've been underdogs the entire time, fighting for that spot. They're that team that you can't really hate unless you're a fan of whoever wins this series between the Stars and the Golden Knights, or you're a team that they beat. Unless you're a fan of those teams, you are probably a pretty big supporter of this team because they are fun to watch. And they didn't just squeak away in the conference finals. They dominated. They absolutely, I mean, they showed us who the best team in the conference was. And just because you don't have that regular season success, because if we're talking examples, Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
Okay. Dallas Cowboys have pretty good regular season success, and then they fizzle out. These are teams, now they're not quite as successful as these other teams, but these are examples of teams, San Francisco 49ers have had great records and have not gotten it done. You can have a great record in sports and not get it done because the regular season and the playoffs are two different beasts. You've got to be able to tame both, and a lot of teams can't. Plenty of teams can win in the regular season and figure it out, but it's the playoffs where it really matters. And I'm going to be honest, I think that's shown. We've seen that, especially in these NHL playoffs, because like teams that I honestly thought we'd still see are not here. So,
right.
But between the Golden Knights and the Stars, obviously they're not quite done with that series. Who do you have walking away with that? Obviously the Vegas leads 3-1, but do you have the Stars making a 3-1 LBJ type of comeback, or do you think the Golden Knights will close it out next game?
As much as I would like the Dallas Stars to come back, I do think Vegas is going to take care of Dallas at home tomorrow night. That arena is going to be absolutely rocking. Unfortunately, Dallas dug themselves in this hole. Going into this series, I thought this was a series that can go 7 games. And it technically, while the odds are not great, it still can. But I do think Vegas has that it factor to them right now. And I think they have an opportunity to win their second Stanley Cup final. What are your thoughts? Do you think Dallas is going to come back, or do you think Vegas is going to take care of them as well?
I think Vegas is going to take care of them. I do. I don't think Dallas is going to come back because as good of a team as Dallas is, again, having to come back from a deficit like that is not an easy thing to do. And more teams than not have failed. I mean, again, it's coming back 3-1 is not a common trend. It's not something that we see trend and happen season in and season out. So to expect it to just happen is not usually the case. And I don't think this Dallas team is that team that's going to get it done. Of the teams that have done it, I don't think this Dallas team is going to be one of them. So I've got Vegas closing it out. But when we talk about Panthers versus Knights, who do you have winning in the final? Who do you think is going to end up? Do you think that this Panther, I mean, they would have, in my opinion, obviously, because of just who they're playing against, they would probably be considered the underdogs. Who would you think would come out on top? Do you think that the Panthers have one more series win in them?
The Panthers, I honestly think they do. They have done well playing as the underdog. I think they can give the Golden Knights a run for their money. And I've got that game going, or series going, a full 7 games. I've got the Panthers winning the series. I do think they're going to embrace that underdog role even more. They are probably the hottest team in hockey right now. And I think majority of the people that are hockey fans that don't have a, team in this battle right now, I think they're kind of embracing this Panthers squad because, like I alluded to, toward the end of the year, they were a game or two out of not even being in the playoffs. But they still found a way to scrap by a couple of games to get themselves into this position. And now they swept the Eastern Conference final, and now they're going to be in the Stanley Cup final. I've got the Panthers, if it's going to be either the Dallas Stars, if the Dallas Stars complete a 3-1 comeback, or if it's Vegas, I think it's going to go 7 games regardless. What about you?
I'm with you, man. I think this is I think it's I don't want to say it's destined to go 7 games, but I think it kind of is. It kind of is in a place where I'm like, this is going, it feels like it will, especially if it is the Knights. If it's the Dallas Stars, I think the Panthers can take care of business a lot sooner because, like I'll say most of the time, if not all of the time, with having to come back from a big deficit like that, usually you go into the next round and you are gassed. And I think this Dallas Stars team it would not have enough in the tank to, but I still think it could potentially go 7, but I think it'll definitely go 7 if it's Knights, Panthers. And I got the Panthers pulling it off and potentially winning one of, like, I don't know, man. I mean, we've seen some underdog titles in the NHL, but to be completely honest, this would be one of, like, the best. Imagine, man, imagine the Panthers underdogs winning this, and then the Heat also definitely would be considered winning. I mean, imagine that. That's
That would be
crazy.
it would be incredible because obviously the Panthers, they're in the Miami market.
Mm-hmm.
The
It'd be amazing.
It'd be amazing for that Miami market.
Mm-hmm. And it'd be what it would need because the market, as good as it has been and as consistent as it has been, it has not seen exponential, like, growth. Like the Miami Heat, for example, they've been a decent team, but you've not seen them really in the mix since they had LeBron James, as in, like, in the mix as one of the more popular teams overall and for the public. Like, and now they're getting to that point because of where they're at and who they are. In the bubble, I think it was a little bit different because honestly, not everyone was even watching the bubble. Even diehard NBA fans, some were like, I'm not watching that shit. You know what I mean? So it's like it wasn't the same hype. They're building that hype up. And then the Panthers, I mean, out of nowhere, just coming in here, barely making the playoffs, scrapping to get in, and now being all the way here and sweeping in the conference finals. I mean, these are those teams. Miami and Florida as a whole, they have those teams, and we're seeing that. So I think the final is going to be exciting, and I think it's going to go 7, and I think we're going to see an underdog crowned champion, which is always fun to see. No matter who you are a fan of, the underdog winning is one of the best things in sports, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely a cool storyline. Hopefully it comes, about. Obviously, we'll talk more when we get into the Stanley Cup final, whether it be the Dallas Stars coming back from a miraculous 3-1 deficit or Vegas taking care of. Well, it'll be a good series either way. We'll talk about it. Kind of want to do something different in this episode. I kind of want to expand into motorsports a little bit. I'm a big NASCAR junkie. I went to the Kansas race a couple of weeks ago. That was a lot of fun. There's really nothing like it. It's kind of incredible. But it's a big motorsports weekend. We've got the Coca-Cola 600 Sunday, May 28th at 6 p.m. Eastern. It is one of the biggest races of the year. It's a 600-mile race around this, Charlotte Oval. I just kind of want to briefly go through who I think has a pretty good shot at winning it. As far as NASCAR goes, my allegiance is with the blue oval of Ford. But there's no denying the last few weeks, those Chevy Camaros have been pretty dang quick. So have the Gibbs Toyotas. I honestly think we're either going to see a Gibbs Toyota or we're going to see a Hendrick Chevrolet up front tomorrow. I think Kyle Larson may be my pick to win the race. He is one of the better drivers to ever be behind the steering wheel. It don't matter what he's driving, whether it be dirt track sprint cars, late models, NASCAR Cup cars, Truck Series trucks. It don't matter. He's a champion in everything. And it's really hard to deny him. As much as I hate to say, like, I'm a Ford fan myself. But you can't deny a really good driver when you see one. I think Kyle Larson's going to come out with a win on Sunday, to further solidify him as one of the better race car drivers to ever walk this earth. Not like he needs to do it at this point. He's already kind of solidified that. But other drivers I could see kind of making an impact. I do think Ryan Blaney is kind of due for a really good performance. He's already up to 7 top 10s this year. He has 3 top 5s. He's been really close to getting into victory lane a couple of times this season. Another driver that's pretty due is Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick's in his final year. Kevin Harvick's my driver. He's in his final year. He's going to be retiring from the driver's seat after this year's up. He has 6 top 10s, 4 top 5s. But he is still not in the win column this year. He's due for a win. I do think Harvick has an opportunity. If he plays his cards right, he can come out on top in Charlotte as well. Of course, I kind of want to make this, an episode thing, especially as we get, past NBA season, kind of dive into motorsports a little bit. Cause I'm sure, some of our listeners here, they watch motorsports a little bit too. So being able to hear some of that stuff, I think it would be really cool. Another big race that's going on this weekend is the Indianapolis 500. Indianapolis 500 needs no introduction. They had their qualifying yesterday. Man, those Indy cars are fast. The guy who's sitting, in the first spot right now for the starting grid tomorrow had a 234 mile an hour average lap speed, which is crazy.
Insane.
Really cool stuff. I don't watch much of IndyCar, but I do watch the Indianapolis 500. I think Scott Dixon is going to be my pick to get into victory lane. He's got a really fast car. He's usually pretty quick around Indianapolis. So, and I think he's starting in the top 5. So really big motorsports weekend. I just wanted to briefly touch on it. And as we get into kind of our sports lull period, once these playoffs are done, and there's not a whole lot going on outside of Major League Baseball and NFL summer workouts, I'll touch on it a little bit more. Because there's could be some interesting storylines that come out of it that you guys want to hear. And I'm here for it. I love motorsports. So we'll we'll talk about that more as things go on, but I kind of want to transition over now to MLB. Major League Baseball power rankings. We'll briefly touch on the power rankings right now. What are your thoughts on the power rankings so far? Who stands out to you more?
Well, I will say, I mean, here's the thing. It's a long season. It's an extremely long, as big of a baseball fan as I am, it's almost an excruciatingly long season at points. It has its moments. The beginning, it gets off to a hot start. There's a little bit of a lull, but I mean, come on, you can't get any better than having that many games. It makes it better, but at the same time, it just drags it out. But here's what I will say: it's a long season. And this, even where we're at now, it's hard to tell who's who. We're still in a place where you see a little more of it. You know who the worst of the worst teams are. You know that the Oakland A's are 10-42. You know that the Washington's 21-29. I mean, these are there's these teams that are on the lower half. But in my personal opinion, the control of the American League by the Tampa Bay Rays, I mean, they're 37-15. And they have a 712 win percentage. They are the team right now, not just in the American League, but in the entire MLB. They have the best record, and it's by 4+ wins. They are a team that has really stayed consistent. And man, I don't know if I thought they were. I think we talked about them last time we did an episode, and I think I said I thought they were going to fall off. They have not fallen off. If anything, they've just stayed pretty consistent. They've had their moments, but they've stayed extremely consistent. And then on the other end, in the National League, a team that I don't want to say they've impressed me, because this is a team that has been great for so many years, but the LA Dodgers are playing pretty great ball, because they're a pretty up and down team that has really great seasons, but also really mediocre seasons sprinkled in. So I think the Dodgers, sitting with a 608 win percentage, I think they are I think that this is their season to really be one of those top end teams and not fall off. And again, any of these teams could fall off at any point. When I talk about some teams that have surprised me in a bad way, Colorado Rockies 22-29. That's a team that has been on the lower end of things pretty consistently. They've never been really that team, if I'm being completely honest. But I thought they'd be a little bit more successful. I really did. And again, early in the season, you never know what could happen, but they're just not playing like a team that's going to be in the top end of things. And then another team, and I hate to say this because this is your team, but Kansas City has been playing very, very poorly.
Yep.
And they're a team, though, that we've seen them turn things around later. We've seen them figure it out, but with their current record, it's hard to see them really doing that this season. You never know, but at a 15-36 record, it's just that they've not, and they've had some good games. They've had some good moments, as I'm sure you've seen, but they're not that team that's going to get it done. And going into the season, I was hopeful they'd at least be a team that was sitting in the top half. But those are some teams that have kind of shaken it up for me. And then my Yankees, again, I'm a Yankees guy, and my Yankees are looking pretty good, 30-22. Not terrible. They're sitting fourth in the American League right now, and they look pretty good. They look decent. They've been kind of up and down. They had a really bad stint, but they look like a team that's going to be like they always are. They're going to at least stay alive in the regular season and then probably choke when come postseason, because that's what the Yankees love to do. But what are your thoughts, man? Not just on just the whole, league as a whole, but also just your Kansas City Royals. What are your thoughts currently?
Well, as far as the league goes, the Tampa Bay Rays being 37-15 right now, it's kind of incredible. The run that they've kind of gone on. They are an incredible 24-5 at home. And you don't see that, split too often in the major leagues. Speaking that's a 162 game season. So that's obviously going to change a little bit. The Baltimore Orioles are another pleasant surprise to me, because the Orioles have been so dead for so long. They haven't made the playoffs since 2014, and they got bounced by the Royals in the championship series and they got swept. So the Orioles, are looking really good. They're sitting 33-17. Their record is just behind the Tampa Bay Rays. So they're looking really good. They're currently sitting in second place in the American League East, just behind the Rays, 3 games out. I'm going to touch on the American League Central because it is a absolutely garbage division. You got the Minnesota Twins, 26-24. They're just keeping their head above water, just above 500. You've got the Tigers below 500, 23-25. Guardians below 500, 21-28. White Sox, 21-31. And the Royals, 15. Even though they're 15-36, they're only 11.5 games out of first place. That shows how terrible this division is. It's almost laughable at this point. You get one of those teams in any of the other divisions, they're going to be eliminated from a playoff spot almost immediately.
Without a doubt.
It's terrible. Another team that's been a pretty good surprise so far, the Texas Rangers. They're sitting at 31-18. The Astros are starting to pick it up. They're 28-21. The Angels are actually showing some life right now at 28-23. And then, the Oakland Athletics, they're 10-42. We all know they're going to come out, they're going to storm back. They're going to have one of the greatest regular season comebacks in MLB history. No, I would never bet that. They're dead. There are sharks circling the Oakland Athletics in the water right now. They're done. You got the Braves. The Braves have been toward the top in the National League for several years now. The Mets are just hanging out 5.5 games back of them. You go to the National League Central, you got the Brewers up at the top of that division. The Pirates, after getting off to a hot start, they've fallen off quite a bit. And then you got the Dodgers. You got the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks battling for first place in the National League West, which I would never would have thought that the Arizona Diamondbacks would put themselves in a position to compete for the top spot in the NL West. Never would have thought, and they're only a game and a half out. So it's been an interesting year so far. Obviously, there's a lot of season left. I kind of want to touch on this as far as the Royals go. The Royals in 2014, before they made that incredible playoff run, winning the wild card in extra innings, sweeping the Angels in the division series, sweeping the Orioles in the championship series, to taking the Giants to Game 7 in the World Series. Before all that happened, the Royals went into the post All-Star break. Like, after the All-Star break, they were, I think, 12 or 13 games below 500. They rattled off a lot of wins in August and September and pulled themselves within a game and a half of winning the division, which, believe it or not, that was the last time the Detroit Tigers were any good. The Tigers won the division that year. So that goes to show, especially, if a team like Kansas City or the White Sox, or hell, the Red Sox even, because they're sitting 10 games back. Once a team gets hot, it's tough to stop them. And that's the thing. Major League Baseball is a season of runs. You're going to have a streak where you win 10 straight. You look absolutely unbeatable, and then you'll lose 12 out of your next 15 games. It's just when those streaks occur. If you can hit that, winning 15 of your next 20 games toward the end of the season, I think you're going to be setting yourself up pretty good.
Agreed. Yeah, no, it is, I would say baseball is one of the specifically MLB is one of the leagues where getting on those late season runs has made some of the best teams in the postseason. And we've seen that with a lot of sports. I mean, this goes beyond just baseball, but I would say there's multiple sports. You could probably say all the main sports that there are that you think of, with football, with basketball. I think hockey, baseball, of course, as we're already talking. There's been even soccer. There's teams that go get on these late season runs, and then that preps them more for what's coming in the postseason, and they just have even more success. And so I think that we're going to see that with some of these teams, and you can't count these teams out yet. And even like we're talking about my Yankees, they're a team that could bottom out. Any of these teams could still bottom out. It's so early. Baseball is such a long season, and soon it's going to be the only current um, sport. It's not going to be the only current sport we're going to talk about, because we're going to talk more motorsports. We're going to also talk a little more MMA, boxing. We're going to branch out and talk a more variety of sports throughout our episodes, and having lack of NFL to talk about and NBA will be great, because it'll let us broaden our, open up more. But there's plenty of baseball left, and I think that as it goes on, we will have very different conversations. And I think next time, even next episode, it could look different. That's how quickly it could change. It could look way different by the time we record next time.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Especially as we get into toward the All-Star break, we'll start seeing that playoff race really heat up, because there's only a couple of months after the All-Star break of the season left. So we'll see some teams really solidify themselves by the All-Star break, but we may end up seeing some teams that are not in a position to talk playoffs. We may have some teams that are in that position come up, and all of a sudden they're, a game or so out of the wild card discussion. So it's going to make for an interesting topic. I want to finish up this episode, talking a little Husker sports. Not a whole lot's going on in the football foot right now. They're getting close to where they're doing summer workouts and everything. Players are going to be coming back to campus for the summer for workouts. And then obviously in a couple of months, fall camp is going to start. Football season's coming up, man. Less than 100 days. So that'll be cool. Obviously Nebraska didn't get Raiola like everybody thought. I kind of want to ask you this question though.
Mm-hmm.
He picked Georgia, so obviously he wants to win now, but he's already on a roster where they have like 2 other 5-star quarterbacks. They're loaded with 5-star talent. Do you think Raiola put himself into a tougher position there than he would have put himself here? Because he could have come here immediately, made an instant impact, and could have been the hero that this Nebraska team has needed for the last 20 years. Like, do you think he put himself into a really tough position in Athens, Georgia?
Yeah, I think he did. I don't think he's ever. I honestly, if I'm being completely honest, I don't think he is going to end up finishing his college career with Georgia. I think he will transfer. Now, will that be to Nebraska? I don't know where that will be to. Honestly, if Nebraska gets on a roll without him, which we very well could, we're not dead in the water at all. We are still going to be a great team without him. But if we get on a roll, you never know. I don't think it'll work out in Georgia because there's other people in front of him, and also because I just don't see that working out long. I do see him ending up going somewhere else in college, if I'm being completely honest, at some point. So I think he's starting that much back. He could be that much more forward than other quarterbacks, and we could be that much more forward with him. But he took a couple steps back, and I guess it's probably something to do with the NIL. I mean, I'm sure that we go pretty close with Georgia, but I'm sure Georgia, I don't know what their NIL, what that looks like, but I know it's probably it's up there. I think he got a 7-figure deal. So see, yeah, that's the thing. Honestly, NIL is it's a way for them to make money, because I will say that there was a lot of jerseys and things sold with players' likeness, and they didn't get any representation at all with that, or any say in that. And I will say, good news, any NCAA football fans.
Yes.
Yeah, bro, that's the one part of NIL that I'm really happy about, is that, because they
College
officially,
football video
bro,
game.
it's going to be so good. And what it is they said that you can choose to have your actual like name as a player in, and if any players that don't, they'll just generate fake players. So we'll see some real players, we'll see some generated players, but for the most part, who wouldn't want to be in an NCAA? We're going to see pretty much everybody, because being in a football game and getting something for it, that's a dream. So I'm excited for that. But anyways, that was a little segue. But no, I think he's farther back, and I don't want to say it was a mistake, but I think that he's starting farther back than he would if he would have came to Nebraska.
Yeah, I do agree with that latter statement there. I think he would have put himself into position here very quickly. I think he would have needed at least a year to develop, but I think he would have been the starting quarterback at Nebraska within about a year. He is that good of an athlete. And as we have seen, Nebraska has a really fast roster right now. They've got a bunch of track talent on this roster at wide receiver and running back. Got a lot of guys that run 4.3 to 4.4, 40-yard dashes, which is it's damn fast. So having a quarterback like Raiola, who has good arm talent, really good arm talent, that would have been a sight to behold in Lincoln if he would have just committed.
Yeah,
And he's going to have amazing fan support here. But at Georgia, he's just another 5-star player. He might end up being a starting quarterback at Georgia. Nobody knows for sure. But, dude, the amount of support that kid would have gotten, speaking that, one, his uncle coaches at Nebraska on the offensive line. Two, his father was one of the best players to ever don the Nebraska uniform. So, I don't know. I think it's possible that we could see Raiola in a Nebraska uniform, though, especially if Nebraska can figure things out and start winning on a consistent basis. I was just listening to somebody this week, and they're breaking down Nebraska's schedule. And the general consensus is between 6-6 and 7-5. But they're like, that 7-5 scenario, Nebraska could find a way to bite off a game that they're not necessarily supposed to. Finish the season 8-4 in a borderline top 25 team. If they can find a way to do that after a 7-year hiatus of not making a bowl game, give Matt Rule the coach of the year.
agreed.
Because that is an incredible turnaround, going from a 3-9, 4-8 team to 8-4, all in a span of 3 years. The schedule is incredibly manageable. They got talent. I really do like what they're doing with their offensive schemes. They're bringing the fullback back. Power running is going to be back in Lincoln. I am here for it. To win the Big Ten West, you need to have a really good run game.
Agreed.
And Frost did not understand that. Frost wanted to be flashy. Well, we saw exactly where flashy got him. They couldn't do anything. So, again, we'll touch more on Nebraska football as we get into summer workouts and stuff. I kind of want to finish up here with baseball. Nebraska is in a loser's bracket game tonight against Michigan State. They need to win tonight to move on to tomorrow. I hope Nebraska baseball can find a way to beat Michigan State. I think they will. I think they will stay alive. Could I really want to see what this Nebraska team will do in a championship-esque setting? Because I do think this team can make a little bit of noise. They've already made plenty of noise this year with their bats. They've hit the most team home runs in program history. They've hit the most home runs in a conference season ever. They are one of the more powerful teams in college baseball right now in terms of offense, in terms of hitting home runs. So I do think that if they could find a way to win tonight, I think they'll put themselves in a pretty good position. Finishing up, what are your thoughts on this Nebraska baseball team? Do you think they have what it takes to potentially make a run to the Big Ten championship?
I think they do. I think that they have had that ability the last few seasons, talent-wise, but now they've kind of put that together and they look like it is their year. And you could say that a couple of seasons and it wasn't, but I think that this really is. So I think they can get it done. And this team is a team that deserves to have a shot in a setting like the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Fun. They were incredibly inconsistent in parts of the year, but they have definitely come on a little bit late. They kind of pulled the old reverse card on Purdue this year, because last year, I think Nebraska was like a game or so out of being able to come to Omaha for the Big Ten tournament, and Purdue decided to not play, which held Nebraska out. Well, Nebraska went to Purdue at the end of the year, took 2 out of 3, and that kept Purdue at home.
Yeah, there we go.
So they just got to win tonight against Michigan State, and then they play tomorrow. And then they'll have an opportunity to play on Monday. I think Monday is the Big Ten championship. So we'll have more on Husker sports. There's going to be a lot coming up over the next few months, especially as we start getting into football fall camp, as position battles so kind of solidify themselves. We'll know the top people. But yeah, it'll be interesting, and we'll keep you guys all posted. Make sure you guys follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Connor and Heffernan Show, at M&M Podcast on Twitter. And if anything comes up, we'll make sure we post it. If you have any questions that you would like us to answer on the show, don't hesitate to send us a message. We'll try and get to as many of them as possible. But yeah, as always, thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you guys next time.